Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Friday, August 8th, 2025, and you're listening to Alex's News. The high in Riverside today will reach a scorching 100.2 degrees, with a low of 74.1 degrees. That's definitely weather calling for extra hydration and staying in the shade if you can. On today's program, we'll be looking into why President Trump has consistently tried to make changes to the U.S. Census. Then, we turn our attention to California to understand what makes the canyon fire there so exceptionally dangerous. All these stories and more coming up on Alex's News. Stay tuned. We begin this morning with a significant development concerning the U.S. Census, as President Donald Trump is once again seeking to redefine who counts in America. For more on this, we turn to our national reporter, Ethan. Ethan, unpack this latest directive for us.
Grace, it seems President Trump is taking another swing at the census count. Just yesterday, August 7th, 2025, he publicly ordered the Commerce Department to begin a new census, specifically designed to exclude people living in the country without legal status. CNBC reports Trump stated on Truth Social that these individuals, quote, will not be counted in the census, end quote. He claimed this new count would be, quote, highly accurate, end quote, based on, quote, modern-day facts and figures, end quote, and puzzlingly, leverage, quote, the results and information gained from the presidential election of 2024, end quote. NPR notes experts are unclear on the election results' relevance to census data.
So this isn't his first attempt to change the census landscape. Can you remind us of his previous efforts and why they were unsuccessful? It sounds like he is not counting his chickens before they hatch on this one, or perhaps he is hoping the third time is the charm.
You are absolutely right, Grace. This is a repeat performance. During his first term, he tried two main things. First, he tried to add a citizenship question to the 2020 census forms. The Supreme Court ultimately blocked this in a 5-4 decision in 2019, as NPR and PBS NewsHour reported. Chief Justice John Roberts found the administration's stated reason for the question, quote, pretextual, end quote, meaning it was a contrived excuse. The court ruled on the procedural impropriety, not the constitutionality of the question itself. Second, in July 2020, Trump issued an executive order to exclude undocumented immigrants for the purpose of apportioning congressional seats. A federal court blocked this plan, ruling that, quote, illegal aliens qualify as persons in a state, end quote. In that case, Trump versus New York, the Supreme Court dismissed it as, quote, premature, end quote, explicitly sidestepping a decision on the legality of such an exclusion. When President Biden took office in January 2021, he promptly rescinded Trump's executive memorandum, reaffirming the long-standing practice of including all residents.
So there are significant constitutional hurdles here, not just logistical ones. Ethan, why is excluding certain populations from the census such a big deal, constitutionally speaking? What is the constitutional backbone of the census that makes this so challenging?
That is a crucial question, Grace. The U.S. Census is deeply ingrained in our Constitution. Article 1, Section 2 mandates an, quote, actual enumeration, end quote, of the population every 10 years for apportioning representatives, specifying that Congress, not the President, directs this. The 14th Amendment, Section 2, clarifies that representation shall be apportioned by, quote, counting the whole number of persons in each state, end quote. Since 1790, this has consistently been interpreted to include every individual residing in a state, regardless of their immigration or citizenship status. According to NPR and PBS NewsHour, any significant changes to the census would fundamentally require congressional approval. Legal experts, including census consultant Terry Ann Lowenthal, told PBS NewsHour that Trump, quote, cannot unilaterally order such changes, end quote.
So legally, it is quite a pickle, but what about the practical side of things? Even if he could somehow overcome the legal barriers, how would the Census Bureau actually implement a count that excludes people without legal status? It seems like an almost impossible task, quite the census.
Indeed, Grace, it is an administrative and logistical labyrinth. The Census Bureau traditionally counts individuals based on their, quote, usual residence, end quote. There is no existing reliable mechanism to accurately identify and exclude undocumented immigrants, according to PBS NewsHour. The Census Bureau's own research, as reported by NPR, has indicated that asking about citizenship status would likely produce faulty data, discourage participation, and be costly. Essentially, creating an accurate count while attempting to exclude a subset of the population is logistically, quote, almost impossible, end quote. A full census, for perspective, cost nearly $14 billion in 2020. An unplanned, off-cycle census of this magnitude would be immensely costly and likely unfeasible within any short time frame.
Fascinating. So if this were to somehow move forward, what would be the real impact on states and federal funding, and what do critics suggest is the underlying political motivation here? This seems like it is about more than just numbers.
Absolutely, Grace. This is about power and money. The census data determines how political power, specifically congressional seats and electoral college votes, is apportioned among states. It also dictates how over $2.8 trillion in federal funding is distributed for vital programs like roads, healthcare, and education nationwide, as PBS NewsHour and NPR highlight. Democrats and civil rights groups view Trump's demand as part of a, quote, comprehensive campaign, end quote, to manipulate census data and election outcomes. They argue it would be advantageous to Republicans and non-Hispanic whites through partisan gerrymandering. States with large non-citizen populations, such as California, Texas, Florida, and New York, could see a significant reduction in political influence and federal funding if such a change were implemented. This also aligns with a recent House bill introduced by Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, calling for excluding non-citizens from apportionment and conducting a new census before the 2026 midterm election. This census push also links to broader efforts to reshape federal statistical measures. PBS NewsHour and CNBC note Trump's support for Republican-led states like Texas to redraw congressional maps ahead of schedule to favor GOP candidates. Trump has specifically claimed Texas is, quote, entitled, end quote, to 5 additional Republican seats. This mid-decade redistricting attempt in Texas is actively underway. As of August 2, 2025, a state House panel advanced this redrawn map. In response, dozens of Democratic state lawmakers fled Texas for locations like Chicago and New York to deny Republicans the necessary quorum to adopt the new map, according to reporting by the Washington Post and the Texas Tribune. Critics argue this, along with Trump's recent call to fire a senior labor official after revisions to jobs data, raises concerns about undermining the integrity of federal government data for political gain. Experts like Margot Anderson, a professor emerita who studies the census, suggest Trump, quote, is basically destroying the federal statistical system, end quote, to obtain numbers that support his political narrative, as PBS NewsHour reported. As for official responses, Grace, as of today, August 8, 2025, the U.S. Commerce Department and the Census Bureau have not issued a formal public statement directly addressing Trump's latest directive. However, the Census Bureau's historical practice, spanning 235 years, has been to collect data from all foreign-born individuals, regardless of legal status. While experts agree this directive cannot achieve its stated goal of altering congressional apportionment, it could serve several political purposes. This includes creating a separate, non-official dataset to inform partisan strategies, sowing doubt about the legitimacy of the forthcoming 2030 census, providing political justification for state-level actions related to citizen-only populations, and, crucially, mobilizing a political base and framing an issue to energize voters and keep the discussion in public discourse.
Ethan, that was a comprehensive breakdown of a complex issue. It certainly sounds like President Trump is still trying to make every count in his favor. Thank you for shedding light on these intricate details. Today's reporting on the census efforts drew from NPR, PBS NewsHour, CNBC, The Washington Post, and the Texas Tribune. We turn now to a developing crisis closer to home, as California grapples with an intense wildfire season, truly putting the state to the test. Our reporter Chloe is here to give us the latest on the Canyon Fire, which has flared up north of Los Angeles. Chloe, it sounds like things are really heating up. What can you tell us about this blaze?
Grace, they certainly are, and it's a very dynamic situation. The Canyon Fire, a brush fire that truly blazed a trail, ignited just yesterday, Thursday, August 7th, 2025, around 1:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It started in a mountainous area of Halsey Canyon, specifically near Holzer Canyon Road, right on the Ventura and Los Angeles County line. According to reporting from CNN, The Independent, and CBC.ca, within just 3 hours, this fire had exploded to over 1,050 acres. To give our viewers a sense of scale, that's roughly 1.5 square miles, and by early this morning, Friday, August 8th, Newsweek and The Washington Post report, its size is between 4,800 and 4,856 acres, or about 7.8 square miles. And here's the burning question, Grace. It remains at 0% containment.
0% containment is certainly concerning. What are we seeing in terms of evacuations given this rapid spread?
The flames, alarming speed, as Los Angeles County Supervisor Catherine Barger put it, has forced significant evacuation efforts. In Los Angeles County, approximately 4,200 residents and 1,400 structures are under mandatory evacuation orders, with another 12,500 residents under an evacuation warning, according to CNN and Newsweek. Specific areas like Val Verde, Hasley Canyon, and Castaic have been directly impacted. While Ventura County's evacuation zones are less populated, 56 people were evacuated from the Lake Piru recreation area, as CBC.ca reported. Evacuation shelters have been established at College of the Canyons in Santa Clarita, with Pierce College handling large animals.
It sounds like an uphill battle. What's literally fueling this fire and making it so difficult to contain?
It truly is. This blaze is benefiting from a perfect storm of conditions, Grace. We're looking at hot, dry weather, steep and rugged terrain, and an abundance of dry fuel. Forecasters anticipate temperatures nearing 38 degrees Celsius, or 100 degrees Fahrenheit, today with low humidity, according to CBC.ca. Compounding this, the region has been in a persistent drought. What's also making this fire particularly aggressive is the fuel bed itself. The area near Lake Castaic, for instance, experienced the Hughes Fire just 7 months ago in January 2025. While that fire burned over 10,000 acres, according to LAist, it ironically creates conditions for rapid regrowth of what are called non-native annual grasses. These invasive grasses, like wild oats, dry out early and create highly flammable, quote, flashy fuels, unquote, that ignite easily and accelerate fire spread, according to the University of California Agriculture and Natural Resources. This can lead to a dangerous, quote, fire feedback loop, unquote, or what experts call, quote, type conversion, unquote, where native chaparral is replaced by these more flammable grasslands.
That's a fascinating, albeit troubling, insight into how these ecosystems are changing. How are our firefighting resources holding up, especially with other major blazes burning across the state?
It's a huge concern, Grace. This fire demands significant resources. We have between 250 and 400 firefighters on the ground, supported by a robust air fleet of 11 fixed-wing aircraft and 7 helicopters, as reported by CNN and Townlift. However, the Canyon Fire emerges as California's firefighting resources are already stretched thin by the massive Gifford Fire in Central California. That blaze, the state's largest of the year, has scorched approximately 96,000 acres, or over 150 square miles, and is only 15% contained as of August 7th, according to CNN. The national preparedness level has even been raised to 4, indicating heightened wildfire threats nationwide and a sharp drop in available firefighting resources. While CAL FIRE states they are, quote, fully staffed, unquote, for a peak fire year, the sheer scale of these concurrent events is testing our capabilities, particularly with concerns about a 10% cut in U.S. Forest Service staffing, as Politico Pro has noted.
We heard the Canyon fire is threatening power lines. California has a notable history with utility-caused wildfires. Is that something authorities are keeping a close eye on here?
Absolutely, Grace. The threat to 60 kilovolt power lines brings this into sharp focus. According to Tasnim News Agency, since 1992, over 3,600 wildfires in California have been linked to power infrastructure. These account for roughly half of the most destructive fires in the state's history. You mentioned history, and we're talking about blazes like the 2018 Camp Fire, caused by a PG&E power line, which was the deadliest wildfire in state history. The 2021 Dixie Fire, California's largest single-source wildfire, also started when a tree contacted PG&E lines, as detailed by California.gov. In response, California has implemented substantial mitigation measures. Utilities now must submit annual wildfire mitigation plans, or WMPs, detailing how they minimize risk. They also engage in rigorous vegetation management, system hardening like burying lines, and utilize advanced situational awareness technologies to predict conditions. They can also initiate public safety power shutoffs, or PSPS, as a last resort during severe weather, though the aim is to limit their scope.
A lot of measures to combat a very complex problem. Finally, Chloe, how is the air quality holding up across Southern California with these fires?
Air quality is definitely taking a hit. Ventura County, specifically, is experiencing, quote, hazardous, unquote, air quality due to direct smoke from both the Canyon Fire and the ongoing Gifford Fire, according to Fox Weather. Parts of Los Angeles County are also under an air quality alert due to harmful levels of ozone pollution. For our viewers, health advisories emphasize that sensitive groups like children, older adults, and those with respiratory conditions are particularly vulnerable. It's recommended to monitor resources like airnow.gov, stay indoors with windows closed, and if outdoor exposure is unavoidable, wear a NIOSH-certified N95 respirator mask for protection against fine particles.
Chloe, thank you for that comprehensive update on what is clearly a fiery situation. We appreciate you keeping us informed.
My pleasure, Grace.
And that was our second story for today. Here are some other headlines. The Lone Star State is at the center of a national political firestorm over a plan to redraw the state's congressional maps. Spurred on by President Donald Trump, Texas Republicans are pushing to create 5 new GOP-leaning districts to solidify their majority in the U.S. House. In a dramatic move to block the vote, dozens of Democratic state lawmakers have fled Texas, denying the necessary quorum and prompting Governor Greg Abbott to threaten them with arrest. This has kicked off what some are calling a gerrymandering quote, arms race, with other states now drawing new battle lines. In a tit-for-tat response, California Democrats, led by Governor Gavin Newsom, are preparing a countermove to potentially eliminate 5 Republican seats in their state. However, that plan faces hurdles from California's Independent Redistricting Commission. Similar discussions are underway in other states, including New York, Florida, and Missouri, as both parties look for any advantage ahead of the 2026 midterms. This wave of mid-decade redistricting is highly unusual and faces legal complexity, as the Department of Justice has already raised concerns that 4 of Texas's current districts illegally dilute the power of minority voters. Across the Atlantic, there are grave concerns in Kyiv that Ukraine could be excluded from crucial peace negotiations. A potential summit between U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin is fueling anxiety that a deal could be struck about Ukraine without Ukraine. In response, President Volodymyr Zelensky has launched a diplomatic push, reminding European leaders that the war is on their continent and their voices must be heard. Ukraine's position remains firm. They will not cede to any demands that involve recognizing Russian control over occupied territories. Back at home, your retirement savings could be getting a major makeover. President Trump signed an executive order paving the way for private equity, cryptocurrency, and real estate to be included as investment options in 401k plans. The move is a long-sought goal for the private equity and crypto industries, who are eager for access to the nearly $9 trillion held in those accounts. But critics are crying foul, warning these alternative assets could spell, cryptic, trouble for savers due to their high volatility and risk. Don't expect to see Bitcoin in your plan tomorrow, though. The regulatory changes could take months or longer, and employers would still have to choose to offer the new options. And finally, a federal judge is telling a chemical company to clean up its act, ordering Chemours to immediately halt its unlawful pollution of the Ohio River. The ruling targets the company's West Virginia plant for discharging illegal levels of forever chemicals, which are a source of drinking water for over 5 million people. The judge called the company's actions a bold violation, noting that Chemours has been exceeding its permit limits since at least 2019, in one recent case by over 450%. The company says it's disappointed with the ruling and plans to appeal, but for now, it seems Chemours is in some very hot water. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with Claude Sonnet 4.0, Gemini Pro 2.5, Gemini Flash 2.5, and Google Cloud Text-to-Speech. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.